two candidates, Paddy McGuire and Charles Rhodes. Okay, so Paddy, you get to go first.
Okay.
Okay, these are all according to what services the auditor does. So first of all, public services. Since the auditor is the only elected official without a chief deputy, how do you plan to learn all the various responsibilities in reporting, licensing, elections, and financial services without any prior experience in that office?
So I have a broad range of experience that touches on all four pieces of that. I was Deputy Secretary of State in Oregon, oversaw the elections division there, implemented vote by mail there, worked for the Department of Defense for the Federal Voting Assistance Program, which makes sure that service people and their families and citizens living overseas get to vote wherever they are in the world. As Deputy Secretary of State, I ran the corporation division, which is a lot like licensing. It's a public service.
60 seconds.
It's a public, you know, there's a front counter, it's customer service. On the financial side, as Deputy Secretary of State, our agency did our own finances, and so a budget roughly similar to the size of Mason County, 200 employees, $44 million in general fund money, and $35 million of federal money. So, you know, I have a broad range of experience. I mean, there's also a great staff there. And, you know, I am going to have to depend upon the staff to help me learn about the things that I don't know about. And I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Would you like me to ask the same question?
No, I got it.
Repeat the question. Okay. All right.
Okay, first of all, I've been an accountant for 39 years. I own All Protection Accounting. I also am a CFO, Certified Fraud Examiner globally, which is a global license. I've been practicing in accounting since 1980. There are some areas in the auditor's office that I am lacking. Financial services is not one of them. However, I'm going to have to rely everybody on the back row.
60 seconds.
Wow, I'm quick 30. But anyway, so there will be some, as Patty said, there will be some things that I will have to rely on the staff to bring me up to par. Thank you.
Okay. Question number 2, and this goes to Mr. Rhodes first. As county revenues continue to decline, along with the auditor's budget, what will be your priorities as auditor in providing services to the public?
Transparency. Bringing it to the public exactly what the budgets are reflect, where the cuts are, where the you know, I believe that all revenues should be exposed to the public. I believe all expenses as well. I've been an accountant a long time, and dealing with fraud examination and things like this, you know, bringing it to the forefront. Thank you. Bringing it to the forefront of the public is my #1 goal.
Okay. Same question, Mr. McGuire.
So I am very concerned about what's going on with employees in Mason County. For a long time, we've been asking people to do more with less. And you can do that for a while, and at some point, it just becomes impossible to do more with less. You know, obviously there are statutory requirements in the auditor's office that have to happen. There isn't anybody else to run elections. There isn't anybody else to pay the county's bills. Those have to happen, but we're going to have, if we're going to retain good staff, we're gonna have to get out of the cycle of saying do more with less. And you know, I really think it's at an end. You know, I don't know what the silver bullet answer is. I don't know what the answer is. But you know, I think we're together. We're going to have to start to focus on this and come to the realization that there just isn't much more give in the auditor's budget or the county's budget.
Thank
Really
you.
quick, I'm sorry, Amy, excuse me. I'm gonna have to redo this because it's not
Okay, thanks.
All right.
No, I'm kidding.
Thank you. Question number 3, Mr. McGuire. In your opinion, are there services the auditor's office currently provides to public that could or should be eliminated? Are there any additional services you would like to start providing?
Excellent question. The only thing that I know of that is not statutorily required of the auditor's office that they currently do is motor vehicle licensing. The problem is if you stop doing that, then the sub-agencies that operate in the county can't do their job. And the licensing function pays for itself. It generates more revenue than it costs to do it. So, again, I think, the easy answers in the county of where to cut spending, that's all done. And, we're gonna have to start to face some of the hard questions. One of the things I want to do is go to the legislature in Olympia and say, you need to pay for part of elections. 9 states pay for all or some of elections, general and primary elections. Washington State is one of the 41 that doesn't pay a nickel. I want to go to the legislature and say, listen, it's really tough. You are all too happy to impose requirements on counties. Now you need to write a check.
Any question?
Do I think that any of the other services should be cut? Absolutely not. The things that, as far as the election process, I've been studying RCW 29A. If it's not in there, it's pretty much non-existent. The responsibilities of the auditor is what I have done for many, many years. The auditor is the chief financial officer for the county, period. And I emphasize on the financial office. The elections, the recording, as well as the vehicle, I would, at this time, keep that status quo. I would keep that in place as it is right now.
Okay, thank you. The next 3 questions are going to be on elections. So, Mr. Rhodes, go first. Cybersecurity is a big issue with the upcoming elections. What steps do you plan to take to ensure our local elections are secure and safe from any cyber attacks?
I do not have a lot of experience within this, the IT or the cyber realm. The common sense step that I would take is to closely monitor our websites, our URLs, making sure that people that are unauthorized do not come into our election process.
Thank you.
So the good news is Mason County has a new election system that was just implemented for the primary election, a company called Clear Ballot. It is the gold standard out there for secure systems. It is physically isolated, physically and electronically isolated. The tally system is physically and electronically isolated from the internet. So the computers that do the actual counting of ballots have never been and will never be connected to the internet. There are processes around that you need to follow to make sure that you stay pure, so to speak. For example, flash drives to take data out of the counting system to go online to report the outcomes flash drives can only go one direction. You put a new flash drive in over here, and you plug it into your internet connected system over here, but you never go back. The good news is they're cheap. So, you know, we have a great system, and you just need to have processes to support that system that protect it to keep it safe.
Thank you. For Mr. McGuire. Mason County received a grant from the state to provide voters the opportunity to return their ballot postage-free, which appears to have increased voter turnout in the primary. If the legislature does not approve legislation that would continue state funding for this effort, would you advocate using county funds to pick up the tab to continue this program?
Sure. Yes. You know, it also concerns me that we don't have a printed voters pamphlet in this county. You know, that seems to me to be a pretty basic election service in terms of informing voters that we don't provide, that King County provides that the big counties in this state provide. And that's one of the reasons I want to go to Olympia to argue to the legislature that they need to provide funding to counties to conduct elections. The Secretary of State just got an almost $9 million grant from the federal government to do cybersecurity work around the elections. She's keeping all that money in Olympia. That's ridiculous. Counties run elections. The Secretary of State doesn't run elections. And I say this as a former Deputy Secretary of State in Oregon. Counties run elections. Counties are responsible for cybersecurity. And all that money should not be staying in Kim Wyman's office in Olympia. It should be on the ground in the counties.
Thank you.
Okay. Real simple. If we were not receiving a subsidy from the state, I would say no. And the reason being is the preliminary budget that went into our county has a shortfall of $2 million. I'm concerned about that. So therefore, how can we come up with an additional $18,000 when we're already upside down in our budget? So that being said, we have no place where we could take the $18,000 that was granted by the state regarding the pre-postage. Even though our voter turnout was 44, I believe 44.59, they would be able to answer that better than I would. And we did have an increase. However, taking it to the post office, or the ballot, or taking it across the street to the ballot box, really? Okay, to the ballot box, it seems like it would just be that extra step that people would probably be willing to do, I would hope. We don't have the money in our county at this time. I need to stay around the budget. We're given X amount of dollars, we need to stay around that X amount of dollars. We should not go outside and spend money we do not have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rhodes, how do you propose to engage the younger generation, 18 to 30 years old, in the voting process?
I carry the forms to register to vote in my car. When running as a candidate, there's been a lot of people who have told me, I'm sorry, I'm not registered. And my response is that let's register now, basically. So what I would propose is to go to the schools and talk to the 18-year-olds. Make it easier on them to vote. Either go to them or they can come to us. Thank you.
So the last legislature, I think, did one of the really important moves that it made in making it easier to vote was providing registration for 16 and 17-year-olds, affording the opportunity for kids when they're getting their driver's license or when they're in civics class in high school, if that still exists. Not but in social studies in high school, giving them the opportunity when they're still living at home to register, and so when they turn 18, that a ballot just turns up in the mail, is a huge step and an important step in engaging young people. More broadly, we are going to have to figure out together how to let people vote electronically. We're not there, but, and this is gonna take a federal effort. I mean, the National Institute of Science and Technology needs to be involved in this, but, my daughter's 29 years old. Sort of the only thing she does in her life that's analog anymore is to vote, and when she votes, and mails in her ballot, she's registered to vote in Oregon. She asked me why she isn't required to send it via the Pony Express. It's just not where young people are, and we're gonna have to bite the bullet and figure this out. We're not ready yet, but we've gotta get there if we're gonna engage young people.
All right, the next one is on recording. Mr. McGuire first. In recording, when a document is recorded, they are scanned and made accessible online to the public. Do you support posting documents that have been recorded online, such as real estate documents, power of attorneys, liens, mortgages?
Broadly, yes. I mean, it is public information, and I think, as a rule, and unless there is a reason based upon who the person is for it not to be public. Just like with voter registration data, judges, peace officers, I mean, there are folks whose private information needs to be restricted, victims of domestic violence, whose private information needs to be restricted. But as a rule, I think public information should be made public widely and easily, and on the web is how people find stuff.
Thank you.
First of all, I don't believe DV or domestic violence is public record, but neither here nor there. Prior to myself becoming an investigator, I was a process server. I had to go into my county and register with the auditor's office. One of the things, there was mistakes made, and on the back, they, I don't know if it was a new person or what, but they accidentally posted my social security number on the back. Well, that's an error. That should be, of course, inactive. They corrected it right away. So, in all fairness to the office, they corrected that issue. But the point being is, when anything dealing with non-public information, social security number, your driver's license, things that happen within a court of law, which creates a sealed, document should not be recorded. Everything else on public record should. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, the next one is on licensing. Mr. Rhodes first. The licensing department is an extremely busy office with a lot of foot traffic. Would you support reducing staffing in this department that relies on county funding and open a third licensing sub-agency in Mason County in order to save money?
First of all, within our licensing, within 417 Fifth, I would not change anything as far as staffing there. Would I open or entertain the possibility of a sub-agency? Again, and I keep going back to how much money we have. Would I do that if we had the resources to be able to afford that change? I would look at possibly doing something like that. Yes.
So, I think this becomes a question of math, quite frankly. I mean, my understanding is that licensing pays for itself. And, but that said, it's the only function in the auditor's office that isn't statutorily required. If there was a requirement to reduce the budget in the auditor's office further that came from the commissioners, I don't know where else you go. The problem is, the net result is gonna be, it's gonna cost more to not do it than to do it. So, it's a Hobson's choice here, and I don't know how you get around that. As a rule, in my experience, the service provided in the office is outstanding. The employees are great, it's fast, it's easy. And so, I would hate to see that go away. If there's an opportunity to have it done in a private setting with similar services, and that pencils out, I'd sure take a look at it. But, I don't know the math, is my short answer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then Mr. McGuire. This is under financial services. That department plays a vital role in the checks and balances of county government. They audit and pay all the bills for the county and issues payroll for all employees. What will be your approach with various county departments, including county commissioners, who have submitted a voucher for payment that had to be rejected because it was deemed an inappropriate expenditure?
I mean, I guess my approach would be to reject it. I mean, if it's inappropriate, that's pretty straightforward. When I was Deputy Secretary of State in Oregon, the Secretary of State in Oregon is the state auditor. There's not a separate state auditor's office. I had 75 auditors that worked for me. I understand both financial auditing and performance auditing very well. If expenditures aren't appropriate, you don't pay them. To the extent you are dealing with a separately elected official, as an elected official, dealing with a separately elected official, I would pick up the phone and I would personally call the individual involved, whether that was the assessor or a commissioner, and explain it to them. But that's the only bonus they're going to get from me in terms of special treatment is, I would tell them myself.
Thank you. And Mr. Rhodes?
Could you please re-ask the question?
Sure. Financial Services Department plays a vital role in the checks and balances of county government. They audit and pay all the bills for the county and issues payroll for all employees. What will be your approach with various county departments, including county commissioners, who have submitted a voucher for payment that had to be rejected because it was deemed an inappropriate expenditure?
Inappropriate, if you paid that, that was not in accordance with a standard operating procedure, chances, you would have a backlash. So I would not pay that, submit a letter as to why I did not pay that. And it could be something as simple as classification. Whether or not the individual that was making the request called it, was on a business travel as an example, and called it some sort of a miscellaneous with some sort of supporting documentation. I don't know. But if it's inappropriate, and I know it's inappropriate, I would reject that with a reason why. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is on the budget process, and this is my last question for you. Mr. Rhodes first. The current auditor feels strongly that the preliminary budget process is the responsibility of the auditor, and And once it's presented to the county commissioners, it becomes their responsibility. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree. And I disagree because I believe that the auditor is the checks and balances. I believe everything stops with the auditor. I believe that the commissioners have some, I guess, I don't want to use the term say, but has, again, the auditor has, if the checks and balances start and stop with the auditor. The information that the auditor is the chief financial officer, and I emphasize that word, and I've done that on a lot of my forums, is a financial officer, period. They are responsible for everything that goes into the budget, and that, and whether at the preliminary, I'm looking at it right here, the preliminary budget, the revenue, I don't know, and I haven't had the opportunity to talk to anybody, but the numbers just don't make sense, thank you, to me. So, I think that a lot of the information on the revenue is incorrect. I think that the operating expenses, Mr. McGuire made a comment as far as the licensing pays for itself. It does not. We're looking at approximately revenue of $307,000. I use that as an example, and they have a request of Boy, you're an evil woman, you are.
It's not her, it's the clock.
Darn clock.
So, I think it's important that commissioners, when they're putting their when they are looking at the budget, the preliminary budget, that offices present their budget in a similar way, using a standard set of descriptions and rules and that the sheriff's office budget looks like the assessor's office budget, that looks like community development budget, and that it is structured the same way. It's really, really hard for people looking at a budget to, if things are not described the same way. And I understand that has been an issue between offices in the past, and I believe that Karen did the right thing in enforcing a set of rules on all offices, and I would intend to do that too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So Brenda, if you have a question.
A burning question.
You got 3 of my 4. So I've just got 1 left. I don't think you guys quite answered that last question of Amy's, but nevertheless.
I was trying, but I
don't think you hit it. But anyway, given that the county every year has multiple supplemental budgets, it just happens every year that offices come back and have to have adjustments made to the budget. And at the same time, you've got county commissioners and some on the staff that want to go with a biennial budget, that they just do the budget every other year. Where do you guys stand on that?
My first.
Do I still have 90 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. I think that the budget ought to be every year. I do not think every 2 years would work. One of the big reasons is because of the election process. I think that the budget we need to come to some sort of consensus during the period of time when we're in office or when the commissioners are in office. And since they stagnant and it's every other year, to do every 2 years, I think would be problematic.
So, I have lived under an annual budget in government, in an annual budget environment, and a biannual budget environment. And as a administrator, a biannual budget is great, unless the budget projections are wrong. And I have been in the situation where, with a quarter to go in a biennium, in an 8-quarter biennium, you get a 10% cut because the budget hasn't kept up, you know, and that's a huge cut that you have to put in place in a very short period of time. So, I mean, I guess I feel strongly both ways. Biennial budgets are great from an operating standpoint. You have the ability to plan. You're not doing three things with the budget all the time, which you do in an annual budget environment. You're building a budget, you're executing a budget, you're closing a budget out. But the risk of getting it wrong and in the final quarter having to make an adjustment is pretty huge. And so, you know, I think it's something worth talking about. I wouldn't want to leap off the deep end immediately.
Oh, great.
I would like to know, considering that the job is thankless and full of contention and pain and suffering, why you want to do it?
So, I've worked in elections for almost the last 20 years. I started in January of 2000 doing elections work. I was Deputy Secretary of State, and which is sort of the 20,000-foot version of elections. I've worked with the federal government, which is sort of sub-orbit level of elections. I've never worked in an elections office where you actually count ballots on the ground. You know, the thing I have gotten the most satisfaction out of, when I was a Fed, the thing that I loved the most was we had a toll-free phone number where you could call from almost anywhere in the world and get questions answered. But the thing that I loved the most was helping individual voters. And that's why I want to do this, is, you know, I love helping voters to be successful, solving problems, making things happen. That's the most fun thing in the world to me, and that's why I want to do this job.
Sam?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I've moved here. I've made this my home for 13 years. And December 23rd, my son passed away. And I could not work in any type of a campaign election because I had to assist in his caregiving. Work in I want to make a difference. We haven't had, other than our financial services, we have not had an accountant at the helm. And I believe that to be an auditor, you must be an accountant. I really believe that. And the reason I believe that is if there is an issue in the area dealing with financial services, who is going to, we have people I'll give you an example. We have people up on BLCC that really do not understand budgets. They're not accountants, but they're approving them. So, bottom line is, I want to do something for my community that I love so much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
So I guess my question is, I hope that both of you have submitted your information on to vote411.org, and if you have.
If I haven't, I will.
Okay, because we're really promoting that this year for people who have questions about the
Absolutely.
candidates' positions.
If you need information about that, just leave us your email address and even your phone number and your mailing address, and we'll send you the information.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anybody, go ahead.
What is your understanding of what the preliminary budget is supposed to do and supposed to accomplish and how it should be handled?
Are you asking me or?
Mr. Rhodes.
Okay.
90 seconds.
Okay, I have 90 seconds. Okay, real quick. I believe that the preliminary budget, the revenue should be closer than it is. I believe that the information that we are getting, it's almost like they're taking a bowl of spaghetti and seeing if it sticks. I know you all are in financial services, and I'm sorry, but as I'm going through the preliminary budget, and then I'm going through what the budget that they had on their website back earlier than that. I think it was August 31, 2017, you posted it on your website, and I printed that out because I wanted to look at the numbers, and that's what I'm concerned about. And so I believe that the preliminary budget, the revenue, the operation, now what we're requesting, I believe that we're requesting basically what we think we're gonna need. I'm okay with that. But how we arrive at that, they're taking the operations and the salaries, and they're adding those together, and that's the money that they're asking for. And I have a problem. I have a problem with the way that is formatted.
So I think the preliminary budget should represent what offices and departments want to do. That it should be, and some of that should be aspirational. I, for example, would want to have in the auditor's office budget a printed voters pamphlet distributed to voters. I think that's an important function in terms of voter education. And I understand that it's probably not going to get funded, and that the commissioners are going to have to weigh that against part of a deputy sheriff. I understand that. But I think it's important to be aspirational and look and use the preliminary budget to tell people what you want to accomplish.
Anybody else? Going? Okay, well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here.